said that.
Let me ask somebody who knows me for real, right? Really know.
Man, I'm gonna take you to one of them.
Do you think I'm like, from
What she got?
The video ain't really the issue. The video being posted up on social media is the issue. If someone would have sent her that video privately, she and I would have had one conversation about it, and it would have been.
It started in a courtroom so quiet you could hear the shuffle of papers, the squeak of a chair, the shallow breaths of people trying to hold their emotions together. But then, in the middle of that silence, it happened. Tiny, the woman who had stood tall beside T.I. for years through every storm, broke down. Her tears weren't soft. They weren't the kind of tears you wipe quickly and move past. These were the kind that carried weight. The kind that told everyone in that room that something deeper, something unbearable, had finally surfaced. And at the center of that breakdown was one word being whispered like wildfire. A tape. Not just any tape, but a secret tape. The kind of tape that doesn't just expose, but destroys. Rumor had it, this tape held proof of something nobody ever wanted to believe. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some faceless woman in the background. It was closer to home, cutting deeper than betrayal usually dares to go. Allegedly, it was T.I. and Shekinah, the very same Shekinah who had stood by Tiny for years as a best friend, a sister figure, a shoulder to lean on. The weight of that rumor alone was enough to send shockwaves through the courtroom and across the internet. But in that moment, watching Tiny crumble, it no longer felt like just a rumor. It felt real. For years, fans had watched Tiny and T.I. build a love story that was complicated but powerful. They weren't perfect, and everyone knew that. Their relationship had been tested in public more times than most couples could survive. There were cheating allegations, separations, reconciliations, and more than enough drama to fill headlines for decades. But through all of it, Tiny had remained. She fought for her marriage, for her family, for the image of stability in a world that constantly tried to break them apart. People admired her strength, even when they questioned her choices. She stood by him when others said she should walk away. She forgave him when others said she should turn her back. She was loyal, almost to a fault, and through all of that, there was Shekinah. To the outside world, Shekinah wasn't just a friend. She was Tiny's ride or die. The one always by her side on TV, in interviews, and social media posts. They laughed together, argued like sisters, but always circled back. Their bond seemed unshakable. Fans loved seeing them together because it felt genuine. Two women navigating fame, family, and chaos with each other as anchors. So when whispers started about Shekinah being involved in something so unthinkable, it didn't just sting Tiny as a wife. It shattered her as a friend. The whispers about the tape didn't start in court. They had been floating in the background for weeks, maybe months. At first, it seemed too outrageous to even entertain. People brushed it off as gossip, the kind of messy rumor blogs throw around for clicks. But the more it lingered, the harder it was to ignore. And when legal documents started hinting at its existence, when lawyers began circling around it like sharks smelling blood, the whispers grew into a roar. Suddenly, it wasn't just a rumor. It was evidence. Evidence strong enough to be discussed in a courtroom where lives and reputations hung in the balance. The moment that tape was mentioned, Tiny's composure cracked. Imagine sitting in a room, surrounded by strangers, cameras, reporters, and hearing that not only your husband but also your closest friend might have betrayed you in the most intimate way possible. And now the world was about to find out. That wasn't just a legal blow, that was personal. That was humiliation stitched into every word being spoken. That was the kind of pain no one prepares for. The reaction outside the courtroom was instant. News spread like wildfire, with fans flooding social media in disbelief. Timelines filled with memes, angry posts, and debates about whether the tape was real. Some people rushed to defend Tiny, saying she had already been through enough. Others turned the spotlight on T.I., dragging up his past scandals and pointing out that this wasn't the first time his loyalty had been questioned. But the loudest voices were the ones stunned about Shekinah. How could she? How could the woman who called Tiny her sister, the woman who built her brand alongside her, even be named in a scandal like this? The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about trust. Tiny had opened her world to Shekinah, invited her into her family, let her be part of the most private corners of her life. And now, the thought of Shekinah standing on the other side of that trust, hand in hand with the very man who was supposed to protect Tiny's heart, was unbearable. It was more than infidelity. It was treason. Ty, of course, denied it. He called the rumors lies, insisted the tape was either fake or misrepresented. To him, this was nothing but an attack on his character, a smear campaign designed to tear down everything he'd built. He spoke with confidence, but for many, his words rang hollow. Because this wasn't the first time he'd been accused of betrayal, and history has a way of making denials sound weaker than they should. Shekinah's response was even more complicated. At first, she stayed silent, ignoring the growing firestorm. But silence in the face of such heavy accusations often says more than words. When she finally spoke, her tone was defensive, angry, full of emotion. She lashed out at critics, accused people of lying on her name, claimed she was being dragged into mess she had nothing to do with. But the way she spoke didn't calm the storm. It only made it stronger. Instead of putting out the fire, her words poured gasoline on it. And then came the deeper question. If the tape really did exist, would it ever leak? That thought terrified fans. The idea of such personal, intimate betrayal being plastered across the internet for millions to dissect wasn't just scandalous. It was cruel. Some begged for it to remain sealed forever, while others admitted they were morbidly curious to see it. Either way, its shadow loomed large, a ticking time bomb threatening to explode at any moment. Through it all, Tiny remained the heart of the story. Her breakdown in court wasn't just about the tape. It was about years of holding on, years of forgiving, years of choosing love even when it hurt. Watching her crack in that moment was like watching years of bottled pain finally spill out. It wasn't just sadness, it was exhaustion. It was the kind of pain that comes from realizing the people you trusted most might have been the ones cutting you the deepest. And yet, despite her tears, there was strength in her breakdown. Because sometimes breaking down is the first step to breaking free, fans watched closely, wondering if this was finally the moment Tiny would choose herself over the marriage, over loyalty, over the image of family. Was this the moment she would walk away from T.I. for good? Was this the moment she would finally close the door on Shekinah? The bigger picture was undeniable, and it stretched far beyond the whispers of a single tape. This wasn't just about a scandal caught on camera. It was about the core of human connections, betrayal, loyalty, friendship, and the fragile lines between love and fame. In the world these people live in, nothing stays private for long. Every smile hides suspicion, every embrace carries questions, and every promise feels like it might shatter under the weight of exposure. The tape, if it truly exists, is not just evidence, it's a symbol. A reminder that even the tightest bonds can break when fame, power, and temptation step into the room. This story wasn't only about a video, it was about the people behind it. About how public figures carry private wounds that never really heal. Wounds they try to cover with success, with music, with smiles on red carpets. But those wounds eventually bleed in front of the world, staining reputations that can never be fully cleaned. It was about the dangerous gamble of trust, of giving someone access to your most vulnerable moments, only to realize later that they might not value that trust the way you do. And as the courtroom saga unfolded, the questions only grew heavier. If the tape is real, and if it truly shows what people claim, then what happens next? Does it become the nail in the coffin for T.I.'s career, undoing decades of work and influence? Does it destroy Shekinah's credibility forever, branding her as someone who can't be believed, even when she swears she's telling the truth? Or does this storm become the very thing that pushes Tiny into a new chapter? One where she finally reclaims her voice, her dignity, and her power, stepping out from the shadows of betrayal and into her own light? Because in the end, the tape isn't just a tape. It's a turning point. A moment that could reshape reputations, rewrite relationships, and redefine futures. Because in the end, tapes can expose secrets, but they can't erase truth. And the truth here is that when loyalty breaks, it doesn't just crack quietly. It explodes, leaving pieces scattered everywhere. Pieces of trust, pieces of love, pieces of families that may never fit back together again.